Hey, AMIV. My name is Anna Lee, and I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you guys today in person, but I'm still really thankful to get to share with you guys tonight a little bit about my experience doing global missions and why it is so important as followers of Jesus. If I haven't already been introduced, I'm from Houston, Texas. I was born and raised here, and then I went to UT Dallas for college, whoosh. And then I actually came back to Houston to go to medical school at UT Houston or McGovern, and then I did 1 year of residency before coming on staff. If you don't already know that story, feel free to reach out and ask me later. It's definitely something that God wrote all the way beforehand. This is my second year on staff. I'm on staff at the University of Houston. Last year, I did my first year on staff at the University of Arkansas. So this is my second year on staff, my first year at UH. And the main groups I work with at the University of Houston are BCM, which stands for Black Campus Ministry, and ISM, which stands for International Student Ministry. Now, you might be wondering, why would I be working with Black students or international students when I am neither of those categories? But one of the great things about being in the body of Christ is that we're born into a new family because of what Jesus did on the cross for us if we say yes to him and yes to all that he has for us and yes to him as the one who's in charge of our life and not relying on our own works to get right with God. We get to be part of a bigger family that has been around since God was saving people at the very beginning. And also, one of the really important things I think about being a follower of Jesus is being willing to lay down your own preferences. And crossing cultures is a great way to do that. So I'm not just going to plug STEM because I'm one of the STEM directors and I've done it a lot, but because I think it's really awesome. So if you haven't already heard, STEM stands for Student Training and Missions. It's a mission training program that's offered by InterVarsity in our region, the Red River region, every year. It's 3 training weekends in the spring, followed by a summer program for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then 1 weekend in the fall. There are a few people in your fellowship who have done STEM, which is really awesome. And I got to do STEM back in 2013. I went to Kenya with the STEM program, and I've helped with STEM ever since. So this year doing STEM, I think will be my 6th year. And the reason I keep coming back is because it really is worth it. It isn't just prep for your summer program with just a few things to do, but through Bible studies, immersive simulations, and other activities, it really helps you not just to learn how to get ready for your summer program, but how to cross cultures for the sake of the gospel. And we're always crossing cultures, even within your own chapter, even if it's Asian American Christians, you're still crossing cultures all the time. And it's something you can practice on campus and in other friend circles and even in your families. And I think also one of the really powerful things about STEM, if you kind of zoom out, is it doesn't just, again, equip you even just across cultures, but it really equips you to better be ready to say yes to Jesus in deeper ways, to what he is calling you to do with your life. And that's the recipe for life change with God. If you're willing to say yes to Jesus in deeper ways, which again, I think STEM equips you to do, then that's how your life gets changed by God. Thankfully, God is a good God. He really loves you. Maybe you hear the thought of him changing your life and it's scary. And I would just speak against that lie or false narrative that God would change our lives for the worst. Because God says he's a good God. He's like the best dad you could ever have. And he wouldn't do anything that's not for your good. Even if you can't understand it in the moment, every time God changes your life, it's for good. Every time we say yes to Jesus, it's worth it. It's always for the better. It's always a good idea to say yes to Jesus, to say yes to what God is calling you to do, even if it means leaving your home setting. I know you guys have been doing a series on missions, which is awesome, both local and global. And so I'll be talking a little bit more about why global missions is really awesome and getting out of your home context. So let's look in the Bible at someone who said yes to God calling him out of his home context. This might be a very familiar passage to a lot of us, and that's not a bad thing, but I'm just going to read it out. It's in Genesis 12, verses 1 to 4. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Praise God. So again, it's a pretty short passage and one that may be very familiar, but I think it's just such a great example of someone that we see clearly, one of our fathers of the faith, saying yes to God. So if you don't kind of know the background, Genesis is the first book of the Bible, and in it we get to see how God created the world and the first humans. And pretty quick, they fall into decay because they're just giving in to their own desires, and God allows them to do that. And so there's even a point when God wipes off everyone but one family, Noah and his family, and different animals in this big ark. But he wipes out everybody else because they're so bad. They're so disobedient, and they're really hurting each other and the world. And they're hurting God. So he wipes off everybody and gives them the chance to start anew. And then Abram is a guy that we get to focus in on him and his family and kind of what happens moving forward. And the cool thing is that he's not necessarily the first person that God called, but he is somebody that says yes to God and willing to leave his home context. Again, if you look at what God says, he says, leave your country, your people, and your home, where your family is. And he doesn't even tell him where. He just says, to the land that I will show you. It'd be like if I just said, hey, students, you should leave your home city, your campus, your dorm, and I'll show you where to go. And I'm not even going to tell you where. That's basically what God does. And God gives these really awesome promises. He doesn't just say, go and say that there's a land that I'm going to show you, right? But he says, I will make of you a great nation. Abram at this point has no children, and it says his age at the time is 75. That's not that young, and that's not necessarily childbearing age, even for people back in the Old Testament years who lived longer lives. So if you think about it, he's already kind of settled. He's already made a name for himself, maybe. Has a lot of possessions and family. And yet God is saying to leave that, leave what's familiar, leave what is comfortable. And he has these awesome promises. He's saying, I'm going to make a whole nation out of you. Everyone who blesses you, I'll bless, and those who curse you, I'll dishonor. And then it says, in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. That's so crazy. You know, that is super wild. I think if you really think about, wow, all the families of the earth, that's pretty awesome. And then it just says that Abram went. I'm always so struck. Like, did he struggle? Did he, question? Did he fight back and forth with God? Maybe he did. It doesn't say. But ultimately it says that Abram went, as the Lord had told him. And he was 75 when he did it. Again, I think that this is really powerful, and I hope you don't miss it, that it doesn't have to be that complicated. God just says go, and Abram goes. He doesn't have all the details. He doesn't know where he's going. He knows what he is leaving, that he's leaving everything that's comfortable, that everything that he knows, again, his country, his people, and his home, his family. And family is a big deal today, I think, especially in the Asian American or immigrant children context. It was an even bigger deal back then in the Middle East. It was huge to leave your family. It was even huge to obey a monotheistic God instead of giving in to the faiths around you. So I hope that even as you think about your own context, I want you to consider, what would it look like to respond to this call on your life from God? To leave what is comfortable, to leave your home context, to leave your people, maybe other Asian Americans or other Asian American Christians or other people you identify with, even to leave your family for the sake of what is God calling you to. And even if you don't know where he's calling you, are you willing to say yes? Are you willing to go? I think that one of the really important things about doing missions, which again, hopefully you guys will get to hear more about other people's experiences, and I don't have a ton of time, but I would love to share more if I'm able to visit sometime in the spring, or you can just reach out to me. I'll give my contact info to Manny and Camille, or you can just find me on Facebook. But I think that not only local missions is important, but global missions there's something special about it that you can't get without leaving your home context. When I did STEM, again, I went to Kenya. 2 years later, I went with another STEM team to India. I've also gotten to do mission work in Taiwan and Trinidad on different trips when I was in high school and college. So whether or not you can do STEM, which is, again, the spring training weekends and then the summer program, I would really encourage you and challenge you to pray about doing some kind of summer mission work. And if possible, more than just a few days or a week. All of the summer mission trips that InterVarsity offers are at least a month long. Because if you go for any less than a month, even a month or 7 weeks will fly by so quick, like when I was in India and Kenya. But yeah, so less than a month is really short. No shade to people who have gone for less than a month, but I just think it goes so quick that it's hard to really learn about the local culture. Yeah, I just think, and maybe if you've been outside the US, you can relate, or maybe if you didn't grow up in the US, you can relate. But I think there is just something really powerful and significant about getting out of your home context, where everyone thinks the same way as you, everyone speaks the same language as you, everyone maybe eats similar food to you. You kind of know how the streets work, how the city works, how going to the store works, how to drive on a certain side of the road. And it's just so important for us to get out of the US. The US is big, we're rich, but we're definitely not the majority in many ways in the world. We're not the majority of people. We are definitely not the majority of the church, if you don't already know that. The US is a pretty small minority number-wise, and even in terms of how strong our faith is. The term the Global South refers to where the church is really exploding in other parts of the world. So basically all the non-Western parts. So Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In the West, like Western Europe, Australia, and the US, the church is really struggling, if you couldn't already tell. And so I think it's just really important to, one, get out of the US, to experience being somewhere where you don't really know how to do anything. You need the help of the locals. You're learning the beauty of other cultures. And I really also think it's important to not just go overseas or go abroad into non-Western contexts, but also to experience the church there, the local body of believers, of Christians. There's so much for us to learn about the vibrancy of faith in other cultures, and we can't do it here. We don't even know, for example, what it's like to be persecuted here for our faith in a real way, in a way that could threaten your life or your family. And that's something that many of our brothers and sisters, I'd say more so than not, will experience on a day-to-day basis. And if we never talk to them, we don't know what it's like. Or even the vibrancy of things like prayer. I remember one of the things that one of our Kenyan student teammates asked me about when we were first getting there was what our prayer vigils were like. And I remember I just looked at him and I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he was like, yeah, like every week or so we'll gather and we'll have these like night-long prayer meetings. We're just praying and fasting. And I just was like, I've never heard of that. I've never seen that before. That's not a thing we do in the US. And as shocked as I was to hear about that, that's how shocked he was that we didn't do that. I had never even done that, even for a special occasion, let alone regularly. A couple of things I want to touch on really quick before my time is up is I know that it's easy to think, oh man, the cost of going is so high. I have summer internships, I have grades I want to keep up, I have family to please. I get it. I definitely get the family piece. My parents are not believers yet, so they're, as you can imagine, not very happy about my career choice to go into full-time ministry instead of remaining as a doctor. But I would challenge you to really consider that even greater than the cost of you saying yes to God's mission is the cost of you saying no. So just think about, if you were to say no to God, it's not that he won't be able to accomplish his mission because he's God, but there's a cost that you will bear, that you miss out on things that God has for you. And there are people that he wants you to connect with, that he wants you to reach, even on your campus, but even overseas also, that there is a cost of saying no. There's not just a cost of saying yes. And I would challenge you to consider that the cost of saying no to God and what he's calling you to do, to experience something overseas or even locally, is greater than the cost, whatever cost you may think you will be bearing by saying yes. Again, it's always worth it to say yes to God. It's always a good idea, and he's never going to turn it for your bad, only for your good. You might also be wondering, what does it look like to hear from God? How do I know? And again, I don't have enough time to go into right now. It was a lot of prayer, honestly, and even leaning into what I really liked about what I did that helped me to make the jump ultimately from staying in medicine to coming onto staff and doing full-time ministry. But we know that the Great Commission, which is one of the last things Jesus says to his followers after he is resurrected from the dead, he says that all authority on heaven and on earth has been given to him, and that he is calling us as we go to make disciples of all nations, all peoples, to baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to do all that Jesus commanded, and to know that he is with us even to the end of the age. So if you're looking for a call, that call is already in there. It's a call for every believer. You don't have to wait for a special call from God to know that he is already calling all of us to make disciples of every nation. And one way to really engage with people of other nations, people who are not Christians, and also our fellow brothers and sisters, is to get out of the country, to go to another country, to a non-Western context, somewhere where, again, you might not know the language, you'll be really comfortable, eat different foods, need the help of the locals. I mean, Jesus knew what that was like to be not in his home context, which was heaven. He came there for our sake to bear the cost of living on the earth and going to the cross. But there's just something really significant and powerful about being not in your home context, relying on God, seeing how people in other places worship the Lord. I think those are all really big things I learned in my times in all the different countries I went to, Taiwan, Kenya, India, Trinidad, and also seeing what other beliefs look like on the ground, which I think sometimes in a country like ours, we don't see very much. Things like ancestor worship, burning incense in temples, voodoo, Hinduism, Islam, things like that. So anyway, I am going a little over time. I want you guys to get to hear about the experiences of your fellow students. But yes, I hope that you, again, consider that the cost of saying yes is not as great as the cost of saying no, that you will say yes to Jesus, that you'll pray about doing STEM and summer missions, and that even going overseas for longer than that in the future. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully I'll get to visit your campus sometime later in the school year. Thanks for having me. Love you guys. See you later.